From the high desert of northern New Mexico, this is Circle for Original Thinking. I am your host, Glenn Aparicio Perry. Welcome to Circle for Original Thinking, America's electronic talking circle for visionary thinkers. An open forum for fresh ideas and timeless wisdom applied to today's political and ecological challenges. Each episode, we bring together creative thinkers from a variety of different traditions. We ask the hard questions on the important issues of the day: political polarization, climate change, and the rise of authoritarianism might crop up, other symptoms of humanity being out of balance with the natural world. Our goal is to recreate a whole and sacred America and world, a new and improved version of E Pluribus Unum, from the many to the one, and this time not leave anybody out. Join us as we embark on this quest. Today we're gathered with Thomas Crowe and Wahinkpe Topa, 4 arrows. We're going to be talking about love and the wholeness of nature. Love can never be fully defined, but it opens the heart and evokes wholeness, as does the natural world, which is radically diverse. Today, we are blessed to have with us two people who not only possess strong intellect, but also have real-world experience in nature. Their track record of doing good works in the world reveals their good heart. I invited these gentlemen in part because I have just released a book called Original Love, the Timeless Source of Wholeness, and I'm excited to engage in dialogue with them on the subject of love and the wholeness of nature. Now, allow me to introduce my guests. Thomas Crowe is the author of many books, most recently New Natives, Becoming Indigenous in a Time of Crisis, which I happen to have right here. And most famously, his award-winning Zorro's Field, a partial tribute to Henry David Thoreau, documenting Crowe's own retreat into the Appalachian woods. An internationally recognized author, editor, and translator of more than 30 books, he became known for being a member of the San Francisco Beat generation of poets and creative folks living out there in the 1970s, before returning to his native North Carolina community and later founding New Native Press. He has belonged to and worked with many environmental organizations. He's also the translator of some of the more renowned Sufi mystical poets, such as Hafiz and Kabir. Although not usually in his bios, I know he also resonates with the work of Meher Baba, who's another mystic who has a lot to say about love. Now, Don Trent Jacobs, also known as and I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, Wahinkpe Topa, or 4 Arrows, is a professor of educational leadership at Fielding Graduate Institute, and he's a maid relative of the Oglala Lakota and a member of the medicine horse Topa. He's a pipe carrier, having fulfilled his Sundance vows while living on the Pine Ridge Reservation and serving as Director of Education at Oglala Lakota College. The author of many books, including Restoring the Kinship Worldview and Teaching Virtues. Those happen to be the 2 books I have right here on the table, both of which I have read. He's also an author of numerous scholarly articles covering diverse topics in decolonization, counter-hegemonic democracy, and indigeneity. He has been endorsed by people like Gregory Kahete, Daniel Wildcat, Vandana Shiva. You know, I've met all those people and they're pretty incredible, so that's awesome. Bill McKibben, Tom Hartman, and others, and he's a recipient of the Martin Springer Institute Moral Courage Award for activism on behalf of American Indians. And just this morning we were talking about he's also a trained hypnotist, and he has worked with horses. He has worked with horses and wild horses in that capacity, and that's pretty wonderful. And I live in the land amid wild horses, so I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. So, welcome. How's everybody doing?
Well, better than ever because of your beautiful introductions and the reminder of this is the year of the horse and that you're right in the company of those creatures.
That's right. Well, this is not only the year of the horse, it's the year of the fire horse, which only happens once every 60 years. My wife is Japanese, and in Japan, whenever it's the year of the fire horse, actually the birth rate goes down dramatically. They don't want to have give birth during the year of the fire horse because it is so powerful. They're a little almost intimidated by it. Although my wife's sister was born exactly 60 years ago, so she was born in the year of the fire horse. So anyway, we're definitely going to talk about that, but I did want to start with something a little bit different, but not really that different. Um, in my view, my dog is chomping away on a piece of wood back there. All right. Uh, I just wrote this book, Original Love, but I never, ever imagined that I would do it. It was asked for me by Spirit. It was my wife was the one who told me to do it. She just announced that you're going to write a book called Original Love. That was about 7.5 years ago. I never imagined that love could be defined. It's so huge. It's so enormous. It is beyond knowing. It's just such a huge subject. But one thing I know about love is that it does open the heart. So the question I want to ask for both of you is what is it about nature that opens the heart in blessing and wholeness? What is it about the natural world that opens the heart in blessing and wholeness? And whoever
Well,
wants to come
you
in,
want me
Thomas,
to
go
start?
ahead.
I was gonna suggest that I could read just a paragraph of my review of your book that really responds to what you just said. So if that's okay, I'll go ahead and read it and we'll kind of set us up for further conversation.
Well,
Um,
yeah, normally don't have too much reading, but in that case, I would be a fool to say no. Thank you. All right.
hey, all right, we'll give it a shot then. The book review starts with a quote. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. And that's a quote by the rock group Foreigner. There's love and then there's love. In Glenn Aparicio Perry's book, Original Love, A Timeless Source of Wholeness, he gives us the full Monty of what this means, as if looking at the earth from outer space through enlightened eyes. We're not just talking about romantic love here, but how the love energy is pervasive and proactive both here and beyond. Perry spends a lot of time musing about, almost biblically, about ancient and recent indigenous peoples and how there was no distance between mankind and nature, in a nature that included the cosmos as well as the earth. He discusses this paradigm in context of what is original in relation to time, saying original meaning arising from source. If something is original, it is timeless, both old and new, and both place and time, with love being a foundational force of the cosmos. As many indigenous peoples know, it is all about transcending the rational mind and returning to leading from the heart. So
Mm.
that's the beginning of my review, and it kind of echoes what you just said. So um, we can go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your own words, what is it about nature that opens? When I say in your own words, I mean those were your words, but off the so-called top of the head, or perhaps not from the top of the head, perhaps from the heart. What is it about nature that opens the heart in blessing and wholeness? Now you live for, you always live among nature. Even when we're inside, we're living among nature. This is it's sometimes a silly distinction. I have a tile floor, which comes from the stones. I have wood beams that come from the trees. We're still in nature, but what is it about being out perhaps for a walk in the woods that opens the heart in blessing and wholeness? If you want to address it, Thomas, or 4 hours, you still have the
Well,
talking,
you,
Thomas.
you, you just mentioned my living off the grid, and I did for 4.5 years, some years ago now. Um, but during that time, I just come from living in San Francisco for many years, and uh, I had to transition from city life to rural nature life. And after about a year or so, I started acclimating to the natural world. And I was living pretty much solitary, not totally, but a lot of the time I spent in the woods in my little cabin was pretty just me and whatever was there. And I think that over time I came to cherish um, the inhabitants of the natural world more than I did the human world. And I was becoming friendly, and I was becoming not only accustomed but knowledgeable about the animals, the plants, the trees, and then even the weather. And what happened was is that my mind started changing, and it became more psychic in a way. I could anticipate things that I could never do before. Uh, I could almost speak to animals and rivers, trees, uh, which is something I couldn't do before. So just being in that environment and having that influence and being open-minded to it all, and appreciating it and being reverent, that was a big part of it. Um, Really changed my life and my perspective on reality. And from there, over the years, and through various teachings of different people and my own experience, I've come to see nature is bigger than just what we experience here on the planet Earth. There's a whole cosmic element to it, and we're all connected to that. And so I'm in the process now of just trying to, as a kind of an outsider in a way, become part of that community, that larger community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. And we turn to 4 arrows.
Well, thank you, Thomas. I think that you say it all when you say that it changed you. And that's the challenges that we're facing in our world today is we have left the teacher that should have us in balance, and it will change us if we could do, whether it's walking down downtown New York and looking at a weed coming out through the concrete sidewalk, or whether it's out being in a beautiful forest. We tend to restrain our egos. We tend to start tuning in because there's a communication happening. I know for many years when I've done conferences, when people come into the room, I will have checked out where are there some trees or some plants that are easy to access from the room, and I'll say, you guys can put your stuff down, but I want you to go out and touch one of the plants that's outside the foyer to your left. And they'll kind of, look like, well, that's kind of a strange thing, but we'll do it. And they come back in having gone out and touched a plant. And then I say, well, before you sit down, and maybe you're going to laugh, I say, I want you to go back out again, and except this time before you touch the plant, I want you to ask permission and wait for an answer. And a lot of times they'll be, if I'm doing it with monks in Japan, they're probably pretty cool about it, but still they smile. If I'm doing it with troubled youth in detention facilities in Missouri, then they shake their heads and say some pretty nasty things about how crazy it is, right? But always, when the people come back, there's a tear shed. There's someone that said what Thomas said. Wow, it's changed. I'm different now in some form. Communication, the insights, and it's quite powerful. So I think that those of us who are thinking about this, just thinking about, wait a minute, we're in partnership right now on the ocean. I'm here with a good friend of mine, very well known in the indigenous world, and we're partnering with the ocean. I mean, how often do we think that every breath we take, we're breathing in the oxygen from the trees, even maybe the weed and the concrete, and the plants from the ocean, and yet we're in partnership because we're giving back. So I think that it's a great question to start with, is that it's a place for learning reciprocity, learning patience, learning all of the teachings that we have always, indigenous cultures have always used for learning how to assuage their anger and their greed and live in balance.
Beautiful, beautiful. It seems to me that that is one of the core beliefs in Native America, is that the natural world is one of blessing and wholeness, and that's not usually shared by non-natives who are thinking of the natural world as, sometimes something to conquer. Sometimes just more very utilitarian, of looking at a forest and saying, how many trees could I cut down here? What portion of the city could I build? And sometimes that works out, north of San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake, they cut down a lot of the big trees there. And if you go to Sebastopol now, it looks like they've always been there, but actually they grew so fast back. They grew so fast back that it worked out. But mostly the rapacious nature of tearing down nature doesn't rebalance as quickly. So now, guys, we're entering this year, the aforementioned year of the fire horse, that only occurs after 60 years. And a lot of people are saying that this is going to be some kind of a tumultuous year or some kind of year of transition. The fire horse has a lot of power. Seems to me it has a lot of feminine power in particular. So what's going to happen here? How are we going to navigate this treacherous path with grace and dignity? Or are we going to navigate it with grace and dignity? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
We can just take turns, Tomas, and
Yeah.
you go ahead.
Well, I think that the only way we're going to get through what some people are predicting is with compassion and reverence for the world around us, which includes everything, of course. I tend to write better than I talk, but I think one of the major elements of that transition has to be the love aspect. And Glenn, you've talked about Original Love, wonderful book about that like I said is in my mind really biblical to the years coming ahead. It takes religion out of the picture, and we talking about wisdom instead of religion. and understanding. Um, but I think love is the key. If people don't raise their consciousness to this certain level of love that we're talking about, we may be in trouble because the greed and the anger tends to take over human consciousness in precarious situations. So if you let me read again, like I said, I tend to write better than I talk. So this is just a little short poem. It's from my translations of Kabir, the Sufi poet that you mentioned. And
Okay.
the title of the poem is The Swing of Love.
Mm.
Hang up the swing of love today. Hang your body and your mind between the arms of the beloved and swing in the ecstasy of love's joy. Bring that tear-filled rain from the clouds to your eyes and cover your heart with the shadow of night. Go now and whisper in her ear and tell her of the desperate longing of your heart. Kabir says, listen to me. Show me how you and the beloved are forever wed. And
Mm.
in this case, the beloved is feminine, like we've been talking about. And this book is divided. The translations, half the book is the beloved is masculine, half the book the beloved is feminine. So that was one of the feminine poems. Since that book has come out, I've had many women, especially, comment on how they liked the idea of the beloved being feminine and not always masculine, like it has been for centuries now in the Western world.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to throw a little wrinkle maybe into the thinking of your audience. I think we're all on the same page, but I want to move away from the focus on the word love and put it back on the focus of nature, Mother Nature, to bring the feminine perspective on. And here's why. I think that our anthropocentrism is killing us, and that's what's caused where we are in the crisis that we're in. And if we look at Peter Kropotkin's book, Mutual Aid was the name of it. He wrote it at the time that Darwin wrote Descent of Man, when everybody was the neo-Darwinism was bringing in this concept of dog eat dog and hierarchy, and yet he knew at what Kropotkin said, and that is no, mutual aid is what the earth is. Earth is love. Loving, the action word. I think I mentioned to Glenn in one of our conversations that I've not been able to find the noun love in any of our indigenous languages, but there's a whole lot of verbs about it. So I think in the indigenous perspective, it's the action. Certainly we know when we talk about love, it's been responsible for crime and murder and horrors that we could, when we look at how people use love as a rationale for these kind of things. But you can't say that about loving, the act of loving. And so I think that if we look at Mother Nature and we say, look, our priority is loving, well, then we've got all our soap operas to look at. We've got all our histories of being broken up with, or being angry with our wives, or we got all of those things get mixed up in our hypnosis of our beings. But when we really start to look and realize that nature is what the three of us have all said it is, and we recognize that it is, by definition, the essence of loving, of the great mysterious things, path to this loving. So I just kind of want to put that into the equation.
I'm loving it. It's, oh my. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's something that we used to do so much. We used to play with at the in the seed organization that I founded, and we convened these language of spirit dialogues, and that's really where they emerged from. I mean, they were already happening long before the the when Seed convened them. They began in 1992, and that's what they began about. They were talking about that in in native language, everything is a process of relationship, and it's in these in Western, generally English and also Indo-European languages, it's representational. So there's a separation between us and the natural world. And that is at the root of something. And I appreciate Thomas bringing in that, love is super important. I really appreciate that because that's what the Dalai Lama said. Love and compassion are no longer luxuries; they're necessities. We cannot exist when we go into the future without them. We really can't. We really can't.
And
But I
if I may,
would do want to add one more thing, and then I'll bring it back to you. But I want you guys to address now, the what's happening to the natural world, because I have some grief about it. I have some grief about it. It seems to me that we're living in the age of consequences, that we already erred to such an extreme that Mother Nature is just balancing, just rebalancing, but that rebalancing is sometimes felt with a formidable force, and power that is hard for humans to navigate. And that's what's happening with climate change. More importantly to me, I don't like to focus just on climate change, because to me, climate change is really about the loss of soil, and I think it was Charles Eisenstein. I was reading his book, and he was saying that if you look up on Google, and I confirmed just what he said, if you look up on Google the soil erosion and how that causes climate change, you will only find how climate change causes soil erosion. But it really isn't that way. It happens because we're causing soil erosion all over, and we're just not being respectful to the soil at all. We're not understanding that there's a ton of living organisms in the soil. Pick up one handful of dirt and you got, millions of nematode worms and all kinds of things that are living in the soil. And we just don't seem to see that anymore. So I'm in a little bit of grief here. So how do you to deal with that? I deal with it through love, but I want to hear what you guys think. 4 arrows. Maybe you go first.
well, sure. There's three points I'll try to make real quickly. One of them is that soil is very differently understood by indigenous cultures. I gave a presentation with 4 soil scientists, and at the end of it, I winked at them so they wouldn't get mad at me, and I said, "What they say is very important, but let me show you a slide to show you why it's not going to do any good." And I showed a slide of 3 people that I respect: Mahatma Gandhi. Well, they were. I won't. To make it short, they were quotes that were saying, "We've got to take care of the soil and the earth because it will take care of us." And then I showed Chief Seattle's speech, and I don't have it handy, but it's much more poetry than I could say. But I read the audience was able to read all 4 of them. Well, Chief Seattle said, the dust beneath my feet is has memories of my ancestors. And it went on in that vein and I asked the audience, I said, what's the difference between these three conservationists and Chief Seattle's speech about soil? And they all got it right away. They said, well, they're talking about this as a living, loving earth. It's not just something we got to take care of for growing food. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other is I spent about 6 months looking at documentaries of anthropologists that have gone into cultures that are very remote from Western influence. And I was surprised when I in my notes, I found that every single one of them had a medicine person who said, younger brother in the case of the Kogi, but referring to the dominant worldview, that we're killing our planet, we're killing Mother Earth, we're killing this planet, and it struck me because I thought, well, I know we could be toast, we could be like the dinosaurs, but Mother Earth is is strong and is just going to get through it. But they didn't say that. They didn't say younger brother is causing us to our species to not exist. They did. They said Mother Earth is dying, and I had to really reflect on that. That we are all the same thing. We are Earth, and Earth is us, and it all is dying. So I think that this is a very serious situation in that. And the third and last thing that I'll say is I think we need to redefine hope. I bump into a lot of good-hearted people that will watch one thing that changes in this fascist government that we have, that they think that Democrats or somebody has taken a stance against it or whatever, without realizing how deep and dangerous this whole system is, and that there's not really, the change isn't happening. It's just the blame. And they have hope from that things will turn out all right. I have to hope that things turn out all right. I think we need to redefine hope. And I know I was at the University of British Columbia presenting on indigenous worldview as a non-binary study. And somebody said, do you think if we all can return to our nature-based worldview that we can turn things around? And I said no. And they went from loving me to hating me in that moment. I could feel it. And the hands went, well, then why are you doing this work? And I redefined hope for them. I said, hope shouldn't be what we usually think. The certainty that things are going to turn out all right. Probability, in fact, doesn't show that. And that can get us into a Hippocratic or a hypocrisy. But I said, let's redefine it. And then we have a chance of turning things around sometime. And that is, instead of it being a certainty of an outcome, it's the certainty that what we're doing is the right thing, and that what we are doing is about compassion and loving our earth, and of which we all are part of, and every creature on it.
So you're saying it's not the key to return to nature-based wisdom only? It's just to be in relationship, in reciprocity, in loving, compassionate action, and letting go of the belief system that this will produce that, that kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think those cognitive actions can be what are decided as to what is the right thing to do, right? So we have to bring in that side of it. But I think until we can truly switch over and realize that the trees, the ants, the birds, the clouds, the mountains, the oceans, that they are sentient, that they have responsibilities that they are keeping and that we are not. And until we make that shift, then I don't think any of our plans and any of our good ideas are going to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What say you, Thomas, on this subject? Because it did work for you to return to nature-based wisdom. So I'm curious what you think.
Well, well, you just read my mind. I agree with what Boreras just said completely. I was just going to say that during my time living off the grid in Zorro's Field here in the Appalachians, one of my most important relationships was with the soil because I was dependent on what I grew to survive, to eat. And I had a small field out in front of the cabin that I worked, farmed, uh, and organically. And but the soil needed nurturing, so I had to get manure to put into the ground, every year or two, or composting the soil and bringing in loads of something to keep the soil active and alive. So even though that I didn't know everything that was living in the soil from a scientific point of view back then, I knew it was important to keep my soil healthy. And so, but that applied, like I was saying, to everything else, that everything else needed to be healthy. And I watched as the plants, the animals, the atmosphere all interacted and took and gave accordingly. Um, so it's like what Flores was saying. If we don't take care of what we've got, the basics, our foundations, we're in big trouble, and I think we're already in big trouble. And if we don't do something about it pretty quickly, our history is going to be um, written by somebody from another planet. Um, but I've always liked the quote by Bob Dylan. He said, it's always darker before the dawn," one of his songs. And we're living in one of those dark times. And a lot of Western thought tends to be linear, but the indigenous people especially think in a cyclical way of existence. And so there's always, if you study history, you can just see it, there's a downtime, there's a dark time, but then it comes back around and people and places flourish and have a good life like we've been having here in the United States for the last 75 or 100 years. Well, since World War II anyway. But now we're in the dark times. We're down at the bottom of the cycle. So we've got to find our way back up uh, out of the darkness into the light.
Mm, mm. Interesting. Interesting. I appreciate so much of what you're saying. I do want to stick up for some darkness because, I know
Well,
what you mean. We always use that as a metaphor. We need to go into the light, but we also sometimes we just need these dark times. We're all born in darkness and grow toward the light. I do tend to focus on that a little bit. And you were talking about the soil. Oh man, well you're, I know that you know Gary Snyder. So you must have heard the poem by him about composting.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah, it's just such a beautiful
yeah,
poem, but so evocative. You turn the soil over and over. He's talking about with your mind. So you have to compost your mind. You have to compost your mind because you have to turn the soil over and over and over, and then you can be free. Ah, it's beautiful. And I
right.
want to say
Well,
one thing, Thomas, for the thing that I don't have my written review with me, but one of the things that I wrote about in reviewing your book, Zorro's Field, that just so impressed me You spoke about how important the soil was to you, but also what was important to you was after you successfully grew plants, you needed to store them. So you decided to create a root cellar. And to create a root cellar, you had to go through the floor down into Mother Earth to create this cellar in the darkness, in the absolute pitch darkness. And when you were doing this, you nearly killed yourself. You nearly killed yourself because at one point you fell and you had built a ladder so that you could get down there in the dark, but you fell and you thought you might have broken your ankle. You might not have been able to climb back up. They might have found you years later, but you did manage to get back up. But that to me was the metaphor for what you were doing. You were rooting in place. You were rooting in place. It was pretty remarkable what you did. So the combination of working with the soil and then finding a way to store your food at a constant temperature below the earth, wow, that is what sustained you. And then you were really literally dug in to the place. And that was pretty remarkable. I really felt that deep in my soul. So I think if anybody listening has never read Zorro's Field, yeah, do read it. Yeah. Oh my God. So I turn to you, 4 arrows. I know you have some more thoughts.
Well, the darkness, I've spent some time with the Kogi in Colombia, and their mamos, they go into caves for up to 9 years in the darkness, and that's where their wisdom comes from. That comes from the meditation, the prayers, and so we don't want to be afraid of darkness. That's for sure. So I agree with both of you, and I do look forward to reading your book, Thomas. And I'm gonna order it. I can't get them physically here, but I can get it online. I think that we're all on the same page. That this idea of being in a cycle as opposed to a linear process. We should keep in mind the Hopi belief, which is also the Mayans also have it, and that is that we've been in this situation before, and nobody knows exactly the details and how many thousands of years are in one world, but they say that we have been given a certain number of worlds. One nation says 7 worlds, and another says 9. But it's not. Nobody knows for sure any of this stuff, but that we've been, as a species, we have been given the opportunity to live in harmony with our amazing imaginations. We're not born sinful. There was a time when I thought humans were a cancer on the planet, and I'm sad to say that, and I apologize for it. But our species, just like anything else Mother Earth has put on this planet, is part of the planet, and so I'm really sorry that I felt that way. Our dominant worldview is that we're born sinners. I mean, all 3 of the Abrahamic religions say so. But we're not. We just happen to be malleable. And that's why we have said, I've got a card deck coming out called All My Relations, a gratitude deck. And I have 52 different cultures, indigenous cultures, talking about their mythology about another entity, whether it be a 4-legged, 2-legged swimmer, crawler, tree, or whatever. And what I learned from that study is that we are malleable. Our imaginations can get us out of nature, but if we keep the focus on our loving nature, then we stay in balance. And we do ceremonies for the self-hypnosis that we are required to have. That's what ceremonies are. They're natural, focusing and having intention and bringing that into action, which is kind of a layman's definition for hypnosis. So I think that, if we're in a fourth or fifth world coming up, who knows, we better start getting it right. And that those who are going to rebuild whatever is going to break should have watched this conversation between the three of us, right? And maybe they won't start out like most apocalyptic movies, that start out just the way they ended, right? Instead, they could say, "Hey, yeah, sure, come in my house. I'll share my food with you." But we're in deep trouble, and until we recognize how we lived for 99% of human history, and shied away from it about 10,000 years ago. And this idea of separating from nature just caught fire. But we can do it. It's just if we only have a limited amount of worlds, we shouldn't take any one of them for granted, because nobody knows the right number.
Wow, there's a lot of things I want to jump in on there. And thank you for bringing in hypnosis again. I think you probably only knew this morning when I sent you an email, but I also studied hypnosis like 40 something years ago and practiced it in California. I was a kind of a radical hypnotist, though. What I did was I would take somebody into a trance and tell them stories, but I would go into trance too, and I don't know where the stories were coming from, but seemed to work.
Very Ericksonian.
It was Ericksonian based, but it was also spirit based, perhaps.
Spirit is.
But yeah, no, we got to get you to come to our land here, because we live amid wild horses. We want to.
Where are you exactly?
We're in Placitas. We're in Placitas. We're only 35 minutes from the Albuquerque airport with no traffic, maybe 40 minutes with traffic, but we're surrounded by wild horses. They used to. This is where the Spanish first came. I know there's Yvette Collins, Running Horses from Taos, who speaks about that the horses were here even before the Spanish. But generally, we think of the Musteños, the Mustangs, as coming from the Spanish in the 15th century. And just to the north of where we are in Placita, 6 miles, is San Felipe Pueblo. And if you go into their church, you'll see a big mural of horses, and they've always been very honoring of horses. And so that's where they were hanging out here. And Placitas was, of course, it was, a place of ceremony, and indigenous peoples were here because we're in the foothills of the mountain. Lots of petroglyphs. I can walk to petroglyphs in my morning, and often do. The Spanish village was founded somewhere in the early 19th century. There's a church there from 1840, it's spread out. It's spread out. So now there's about 6,000 people living in this very spread out village. There's the core village, the historic village, which is where Tomoko and I live near. And I shouldn't just say Tomoko, also Momo's over here. Where is he? There, yeah. A cappuccino and whoever else walks in. So it's still a beautiful place, though, and the horses come here. They're kind of semi-wild now because there are some people feeding them. They have this idea that they wouldn't survive if humans didn't feed them. I'm not sure I agree with that, and that's not the way it's treated in Native America. They just hang out. Nobody tends to feed them. But they're special. They bring horse energy. I was dreaming about horses before I came here. And now we're in the year of the fire horse, and I'm looking actually above my mantle. I see fire and I see a horse. And so there you go. There's something really, really powerful in it, since we quoted Bob Dylan earlier, and, it reminds me of that song he sang about Mrs. Jones. There's something happening here, and you don't know what it is. Do you, Mrs. Jones? Yeah, there's something really, really powerful happening now. And I think, to me, when I was writing Original Love, I thought the number one and number two, actually, there's just one thing that needed to happen, is we needed to have a revitalization of both indigenous wisdom and feminine wisdom. And it wasn't until I was writing Original Love that I had my own little epiphany as a man and realized how much of what I've been thinking of as indigenous wisdom is also feminine wisdom. They're both very much holistic worldviews, blessing and wholeness, and everything is contained. And yet, for some reason, these worldviews have become pushed to the side, just like William Commanda spoke about in the Seventh Fire Prophecy. But he's talking in the positive that there will come a time when a people will emerge that will retrace their steps to retrieve the wisdom that's been left by the side of the trail. And I think all of you have, all of us, actually, I'll include myself, have been seeking to retrieve wisdom, that has been marginalized for some reason, but is absolutely necessary now. This is absolutely necessary, and we cannot go any longer, ignoring the ways of knowing that, they're tried and true. They work. I'll just say one more thing, and then I want to turn it over to you. I mean, we were once doing a dialogue at Seed, and I won't name the person because he didn't mean to do anything bad, but a fairly well-known Western scientist said in that group that I'm tired of the old stories. This is what he said. I'm tired of the old stories. We need to create new stories. Let's create new stories together. And then a very interesting thing happened. He didn't mean to be disruptive, but there was a woman, and I will name her because I'm kind of proud of what she said, named Donna House, who was then on the board of Seed, and the former organization I started that was sponsoring these dialogues. And she said, I've been hearing about the new forever. The new this, the new that, the new libraries, the new thinking, the new science, the new this, the new that. But it's not really that's sustained my people. She's Danae and also Oneida. As she said, no. It's the original stories that have been told since time immemorial. That's what's sustaining us. That's what's tried and true. And then she did something that I wasn't happy with at the time, but I respect it now. She said, so I don't feel like I have a place at the table. And she got up and left. And that's not good in some ways, because Leroy Little Bear used to always say to everyone, be like hockey players and stick around. Be like hockey players and stick around. Nobody was supposed to leave. But still, she made her point, and that point still resonates in my head today. So how do we get back to these original ways that are really, they work? How can we get back to that? That's my question for you both. Oh, look at that. Oh, there we go. A worldview chart. You've got I can't read that, but I can read the headline.
You can go on worldviewliteracy.org and download it for free. And it has 50 of our nature-based worldview precepts, a lot of scholarship behind it, and 50 of the dominant worldview precepts. And the idea is to look at it as a non-dualistic set of opposing concepts.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I
Well,
mean,
we're
just to
coming near
reach,
the end of the
just real,
hour. Is there something? Is there something that hasn't been said that needs to be said?
well, just real briefly.
Okay.
A good friend of mine, Howard Teich, spent his whole career studying the twin hero stories, as did Joseph Campbell of indigenous peoples. And you talked about stories, so I think that's a good place to end it. That the stories that we have had have always been about a solar and lunar brother and sister, or brother and brother, or sister and sister. Always we've had these opposing, very different, complementary sides. McGilchrist wrote a 2,500-page book on the hemispheres and talking about this, but he missed the real story of indigenous peoples and misunderstood it. But what happened, if you look in your own place there, the Diné, they have the story where the two come to the Father. And Monster Slayer is the solar twin, and Child Born of the Water is the lunar twin. And Child Born of the Water challenges his brother, saying, "I don't think that you can get the monster with the bow and arrow. We've got to sing to him instead." And so they work together, is the point. But now you go into the worldview stories that emerged about 9,000 years ago, actually about 5,000 years ago. And in every case, you have a solar and lunar twin, Romulus and Remus, Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, Hercules and Iphicles. And in every case, the solar twin kills the lunar twin instead of working with them. That's the foundational problem that we have.
Yeah, that pretty much nails it. When we went from in my book, Original Love, I do deal with that, how we went from the first stories were all tended to be feminine based, and then we went into the age of gods and heroes. So you're just like you're saying, it's really the solar is killing the lunar. The lunar is a beautiful symbol, and it was, it was grandfather Leon Secatero that told me that that you can communicate with people through the moon, because for him, light is consciousness, and the moon reflects light. So the moon really is hearing and viewing everything on Earth. So if you want to send a message, it's the ultimate, smoke signal. Go through the moon, and the moon will then bounce it back to who needs to hear it. And we can see the moon from everywhere. At least in New Mexico, I can see the moon in the daytime. Normally, it's very cloudy today. I cannot. But if it's up, you can see it. Yeah, that's very beautiful. I think that it is the harmony, the marriage of the feminine and masculine working together that we need to get to. And I think that's true of the great women leaders are looking for that. They're not looking, grandmother Flor de Mayo, Vandana Shiva, people like that are not looking to go into a matriarchal age that suppresses the masculine. They're looking for partnership. So I turn to you, Thomas. Any last thoughts as we come to a near close for today?
Yeah, I was, while what you both were saying, I was thinking about one of my mentors in this life has been Thomas Berry. He was a good friend of mine, and I considered him an important teacher in my life. He talked about the new story. He used that metaphor, but what he meant by new story was like like you said, is getting back to some of the more original or the older stories by the indigenous peoples on the planet, and tapping into those long time, well-known, well-used stories with which to live. And of course, the feminine is a big part of that. And I've been very interested in what's been happening on the planet. I mean, there's there's a lot of dictatorships and masculine takeovers and stuff. But on the other side, there's a lot of women making their way into higher positions in governments and even leading governments now all over the world. Um, and in this country, we've tried that experiment a couple times with a couple women here in recent elections, but it just hasn't worked out because of the um, autocracy of the male and how they can censor the elections, basically. But I think we're on the right path, and hopefully someone will emerge or some ones will emerge, women who can help lead us out of this dark time and into a more healthy uh, time for all of us. I mean, like you say, that you can't get rid of the darkness; it's a part of the reality, but you don't have to live there forever. And so, hopefully, we've got some. I mean, the feminine has always been important to me. I've really honored and I think been more interested in spending time with women than men for the most part during my life. Some of my closest friends are women. And I didn't understand that until recently. I think now it's bigger than me and it's bigger than those relationships that's going on. So, um, like I always say at the end of my emails, I say, may it continue. And so may this feminine movement continue and uh, may we find ourselves in a better place here in the near future.
Mm, mm. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, thank you. I want to say almost a closing prayer, if you don't mind. I don't usually pray on camera, but so I don't know if this should be on camera, but I appreciate what's been said. And beloved Creator, if the words that are said here today, allow them to resonate, allow them to enter the hearts of the listeners. And if it's meant to be, allow those seed thoughts to blossom at their own pace, maybe in a dream, maybe in a vision, maybe even in an action, maybe in a thought. But most importantly, may it just sit. May it sit in that still water. May we see that water as clear, beautiful, healing, whole, and just rest there in undivided presence of the whole, in undivided presence of love and blessing, kindness, compassion, respect, love. None of these things can be separated, but they're all there. They're all there before us. And all we need to do is listen, because the wisdom exists in the natural world. It exists in the trees. It exists in the plants. It exists in the soil. And it exists in our hearts. So if we can tune into this, if we can tune into this, amazing things may happen. Amazing things will happen. Aho, mitaku yasa. All right, thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate the beautiful dialogue. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the good works you've done in the world.
It's been an honor to be with both of you.
It's an
Wopilatam.
honor. Thank you.
Yes.
Blessings.